The Buccaneers released their first official depth chart ahead of this weekend's game in Cincinnati. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this WTSP Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at EKlosky We are your credentialed members of the media covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm the deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Evan is, of course, on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10TampaBay.com. And you can catch the show Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. For that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Getting Evan's take on what he's looking for this weekend when the Bucs take on the Bengals. That's coming up in a little bit. But let's start with the release of the Bucs' first official depth chart of 2024. And Evan, I took a little glance at it. I saw a few things that popped out to me, but what stood out to you the most looking over some of the starters that the Bucs have listed?
I think the number one thing that pointed out to me was how they don't want to ruffle any feathers right now. It seems like they're not going to tell the rookies that they have won the job without earning the job. And that's why we're seeing guys like Robert Hainsey as the starting center, Trey Palmer as that wide receiver 3. We even have Christian Izien ahead of Tyke Smith. We have Bucky Irving behind Chase Edmonds. So it's very clear that this depth chart, which sometimes coaches don't put much thought into it, right? But I think that really – out of the gates, it's very clear that they're saying, if you're a veteran on this team, we're still putting you in the lead. Rookies, you better do more, right? Like, I think it's just part of like earning your spot and not making things too easy for the rookies who are coming in.
Yeah, well, and taking a look at it, and I don't know, maybe I overlooked it, but there's really no way to tell who they kind of have lined up as the starting nickel corner, right? They had Christian Izien as a second-team safety, and then Tyke Smith and Tavierre Thomas as third-team safety, so not really sure how that's looking. I would assume that Izien is the starter, followed by, Tyke and Tavierre Thomas, but then something else that kind of jumped out, you mentioned, they're not crowning any rookies early on, which is true and probably kind of the point. But Bucky Irving as the starting kick returner, which he's made some noise in training camp as a kick returner so far.
To be fair, the kick returner position is mostly a string of rookies outside of Sean Tucker, who was given the other starting gig. Was right now running back 4. So they're at least willing to kind of give that nod. And Rakim Jarrett is like 5th or 6th option at kick returner. But other than that, looking at Trey Palmer kind of in the lead there as the punt returner, but Cameron Johnson being back up to kick returner and punt returner. That's interesting because he's a wide receiver who's made a lot of noise in training camp thus far. And Jalen McMillan kind of being on the back end of things was maybe a little bit surprising, kind of noting that, hey, we're probably going to take you out of this mix, which signals a little bit to me that he's going to be utilized pretty heavily on the offensive side of things. Typically, you don't want your your heavily used players as your kick returner, your punt returner. You can definitely do it. It's just sometimes you increase the risk of injury that way. And with the new kick rule, like I would say kick returners, whatever, before this year, because it's
Right.
a touchback. But now you're going to be having to run into a wall of people. So there's going to be a little bit more contact that way. So it's just interesting how that shook out, period.
Yeah, and another thing that really jumped out to me, I talked a lot about this guy. I think it was last week. Alan DeLoach, the undrafted rookie linebacker, listed as the second team linebacker, and he kind of gets the nod over JJ Russell. Yeah, he's been making a lot of noise and making some plays there on the defensive side of the ball. And I had pegged him as one of the undrafted rookies that really had a chance to end up making this team. I mean, any thoughts on a guy in JJ Russell who started for the Buccaneers last year when both Levante and Devin White were down, now kind of, fighting for his job against this undrafted rookie?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly noticed that too, and it's 100% worthy to make a comment about. We do believe that he's going to make the roster when it's all said and done. I do wonder if, like when you go like KJ Britt, Servassier Dennis, JJ Russell, I feel like those are all guys who would wear the green dot, right? And then, I mean, Levante certainly could be that guy, but he's never really been that in his career. He's always, kind of pushed those duties onto the other. So I wonder if that's sort of like where they actually are training them, is that Kalen's like the straight up backup if Levante goes down, and KJ and Servassier are going to rotate roles to where JJ gets in that rotation if Servassier goes down. So to me, I know some people have, and I don't necessarily think that's wrong. It could totally be it. This is just a different perspective. I viewed that as KJ1, Servassier and JJ Russell, kind of that combo linebacker, because we know that KJ's not going to play in every down, and he's going to be taken off the field, and certain matchups are going to lend itself to different personnel. So I kind of viewed Servassier and JJ as like 2A, 2B. And then really Kalen kind of being like, if Levante goes down, we're going to have you learn what he's doing and devote you kind of to that role of the oh crap option. So
yeah, well,
we don't want to. I mean, look, we've kind of seen it a few times now. We had a foot injury in 2021. He had I think he had a foot injury again last year, didn't he?
It was either a foot or an ankle.
It was something along those. It was, yeah. So, and he missed a couple of games, and so yeah. I mean, that's when we had the whole JJ Russell got playing time, and we had Ryan Neal at linebacker. So, yeah, to be determined on that. But you want to? I mean, we'll get to it, but just foreshadowing, right? Like DeLoach. I mean, this is somebody who, in the preseason, man, there's an opportunity. You got to prove yourself.
Yeah, well, and it's a great point about the green dot. That's not a responsibility that's kind of always in the forefront of my mind, or I'm sure a lot of listeners or viewers' minds, that there is a lot of responsibility that comes with wearing that dot and being the guy that's relaying the play calls. Maybe they don't want to trust Kalen with that role quite yet. And then again, you make a great point that, if KJ goes down, well, now it's a combination of JJ and Servassier, or if Servassier goes down, it's a combination of KJ and JJ. So to have three guys that you can trust with that responsibility could be really huge for this team. What is Evan going to be keeping an eye on this weekend? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. You want to catch an upcoming Rays game? Tickets when they host the Orioles start at $30. Then against the Astros, you can get tickets as low as $14. And tickets against the Diamondbacks start at just $24. Right now, you can get Buccaneers regular season tickets as low as $49, and week one against the Commanders starts at $67. And all of these prices that I mentioned include Game Time's all-in pricing, so there won't be any surprises when you get to checkout. You can wait until the last minute when prices will drop by as much as 60%, or buy them now knowing you have Game Time's lowest price guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Everydayers, make sure you are coming back tomorrow. I'm going to tell you what I'm looking for this weekend. I would save that for Friday, but I have a special guest coming up, and I'm going to get his thoughts. So I'm going to tell you what to watch for on Saturday coming up on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, if you want to hear the biggest news from around all of sports, but you want more than just the national narratives and you want the top stories without fake manufactured scripted screaming at one another, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today streams 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I say it every year, and I'm probably going to say it at least 2 more times this week. But preseason games can be entertaining and informative if you know what you're watching for. If you're watching just to watch football because it's finally back, you're going to have a good time. If you're watching to see the kind of football that you expect in the regular season, you are not going to have a good time. But if you're focusing in on certain things, position battles, watching rookies, chemistry, things like that, then you're going to enjoy yourself. So, Evan, what is the number one thing that you are really going to focus in on watching at Saturday's game in Cincinnati?
Trenches, the trench work. I mean, we're going to probably see Graham Barton get a lot of time. We've seen the snaps be a struggle for him in a lot of these practices, and I want to see how the game day operation goes on that front. I certainly need to see the depth there, considering they've already lost Sua Opeta, but we probably will get a good look at some of those like backup players that might have to be a significant part if there's an injury. So then on the flip side, I would love to see somebody from that like outside linebacking core pop. You know, Marquise Watts, Jose Ramirez, you know, Yaya and JTS and Anthony Nelson. We've talked about it. It's a little bit of it's a good group. I don't know if it's a great group. And they're going to have to do a lot of success by everybody putting their hands in the pile. So I'm curious if somebody from within those in that realm of things, or that position, can they prove, hey, I deserve to be part of this rotation? Because all hands on deck, baby. Those 3 that I mentioned, right, they're obviously going to get a lot of playing time. But there are certainly jobs to be had. Chris Braswell, I didn't mention him either, but he will certainly get his first licks in the NFL. And how does he go against mostly other teams' 2s, right? That's the other thing, too, you have to weigh is, for the most part, this is going to be a 2 versus 2. So if you pop, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's anything like you're ready for the big time, but it definitely shows that you're right. Like this is like watching a bunch of AAA players, right? Who's ready to be impactful at the major league level?
Yeah, well, and in mentioning the trenches, that kind of brings me to someone that we couldn't get to in the first segment that I also noticed on the depth chart. And another undrafted rookie, Xavier Delgado, listed as the backup for Ben Bredesen. And it'll be interesting to watch him if they're already pegging him as the number 2 option there at left guard. And maybe that's just kind of where they put him, right? Jason Light, you and I have talked about it on the show plenty of times. They like to keep offensive linemen that can play multiple positions. So it's certainly far from a lock that Delgado is going to make this team. But, is that a player that people should be keeping an eye on given the state of the depth chart?
Yeah, that all is encompassing. Going through Elijah Klein is another guy that needs to be examined. Brandon Walton, we know. He's going to get every opportunity to kind of solidify himself in maybe a couple of spots, right? He's going to probably play right tackle to start. I would not be surprised if he starts the game at right tackle, assuming that Gedeke, and we don't know. We're going to find out soon who's playing, who's not playing. I'm assuming most of the starters will not play week 1. But I would not be surprised if we saw Brandon Walton start at right tackle and then wiggle his way into a guard role later in the game to see how he's doing over there. So it's very possible that can be that can happen as well. So it's tough to play a guy like Baker Mayfield unless you're going to have the number 1 O-line out there. Otherwise, you're really it's a dicey situation. So for the most part, unless you're going to play all the starters, then I don't expect to see them. But yeah, I think it's very worthwhile to take a good look at him. And, as I said, a few of these guys, they'll show a little bit of their depth in this game, especially in the secondary. Guys like Merriweather, Thomas, Funderburk, Hayes, Hall, Isaac, they got a lot of depth there. So certainly there's good competition of who can be that final cornerback, that final secondary piece who makes the team. I think that's a low-key exciting thing to follow.
Yeah, and of course, I think all of our listeners knew you were going to go with the trenches for the number 1 thing, especially that edge rush. I think we've talked about the pass rush on every episode since about February.
Yep.
But yeah, you're 100% right. Watching all these guys in the secondary, a couple of new additions. We've talked about Tavier Thomas and Bryce Hall on this show. How are those guys kind of acclimating to the Todd Bowles system?
Love Tavier. Tavier has been great in camp. Yeah. He's a guy that has certainly stood out.
Yeah. So, how are these guys going to fit? Who, where is Tyke lining up? Are we going to see him more at nickel, or are we going to see him more back at safety? So, obviously the secondary is another big thing to keep an eye on. And just, if nothing else, just kind of the placement and the rotation of a lot of these players. But what's maybe one more thing that you're really going to focus in on from, an all-encompassing aspect as far as, position groups or schemes? I know last year a lot of us got excited after the first preseason game because we saw so much motion in the offense, and then we got to the regular season and Dave Canales just completely forgot that was a thing. So I don't want to get too.
It just became predictable motions.
Yeah, I don't want to get too excited about something like that, but maybe one more thing that you're really going to focus in on.
Well, and I'll make this wasn't the point I was going to focus in. Number 2 is the kickoffs.
Okay.
How are the Bucs operating? I want to see who's also on special teams, because you got to remember that's how positional battles at the bottom of your roster are kind of figured out, right? Will Devin Colt make it over Ko Keith because he can play special teams and block, and Ko was maybe more of a thought in a different type of offense. He doesn't quite fit here. Or is Ko proven to be a special teamer on the kickoffs that it's necessary? And they deal with kind of the lack of athleticism at tight end because they kind of do that. The thing about the Liam Cohen offense, assuming he's taking a lot of the Rams concepts, is they don't need a fullback, right? Fullbacks typically block a linebacker, and that's, how we all know that. But with Liam Cohen, who Luke Gedeke mentioned has more motions than he's ever seen before in his life, they can design the offense, and it's what the Rams do, where the motion man clears out the linebacker that typically a fullback would clear out, and now you've eliminated the necessity for essentially like a tweener type player who is mostly a blocker and can catch a pass or two. You've now taken that out of the equation, and you've put a very athletic player in doing the same job, just schematically doing it versus physically. So, like these are the little nuanced type of things that I'm looking at, and we are really going to get like a very foundational basic packet. Like we're not going to be able to decipher too much. Cade Otton had a tremendous end around play in training camp. Against in the preseason last year that we never saw once. So you just don't know what you're getting. You're getting concepts. You're getting certain looks. They're shielding all their good stuff. Every team is. But it would be nice to get kind of the taste of that. So, so that kind of kickoff is kind of my big picture one. And then ultimately looking at the nuanced things of hey, in the run game, are they using motion to clear out people, or are they going right back to having a fullback in some plays and motioning him? Like there are some sticky things we can kind of dig our feet in on.
All right. Well, we know what Evan is watching for, but who is Evan watching for? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. You're hiring for your small business. You want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open for the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Wednesday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And the Bucs' first preseason action is right around the corner, and a lot of people are going to be excited to watch certain players. Now, I know Cincinnati is going to be playing some of their starters, which means I know, Evan, you are going to enjoy watching Illinois legend Chase Brown take the field for the Bengals, but a lot of Bucs fans...
Local product.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's not but he's born north of the border, but he played his high school ball down here.
Yeah, of course, I got to talk about my dude Chase Brown. I'm still sad that the Bucs didn't draft him, but that's neither here nor there. I know
it's here and there,
and a lot of Bucs fans are looking forward to seeing these rookies in action for the first time. Others might want to see the new additions like Bredesen, if he gets the nod to be able to play, maybe get him some reps. We mentioned Bryce Hall, Tavier Thomas, but Evan, who is the player that you are most looking forward to watching against Cincinnati?
I'm going to make this a tie between Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker has actually flashed a bit in camp. We all kind of wrote him off. He won the backup job last year, played the first couple of games. We never saw him again. From all intents and purposes, it seems like he was a little bit overwhelmed by the playbook. Didn't really catch on, but he's had some chunk plays this time around. I want to see and I want to see the reason I do this for a tie is because I want to see if what people were concerned about with Bucky and his size, is that as much of an issue as we think? And with Sean Tucker, is it, hey, remember the Bucs gave Sean Tucker money as an undrafted free agent. He probably would have been drafted if it wasn't for the medical issue that he had entering the draft. Could we be going back and saying, hey, this is the guy, we being like Jason Light Company, this is the guy that we fell in love with last year. So I'm very curious how that goes. So that's kind of my 1A, 1B, is that running back position and who's going to be that true backup. Chase Edmonds will probably be involved, but regardless, he's not the future. If anything, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see with that. But I think those two, Bucky and Sean, can certainly make some things happen.
So a rookie and a borderline redshirt rookie.
Yeah, essentially.
And it's fitting that they're both on the special teams. It'll be interesting to see if they both get an opportunity to return kicks. If one is going to take priority over the other, because teams are going to line up two returners. So I'll enjoy watching if they kind of I'll get this one if it's kind of in the middle of the field. You get the next one if it's kind of in the middle of the field. See how they work all that out. But I don't imagine Rachaad White is going to play much, if at all. So the primary backs that we're going to see in this game are going to be Bucky and Sean Tucker. Chase Edmonds will be sprinkled in there a little bit as well, but I think they really want to get a good look at those two guys.
Yeah. And then we talked about him, but Kalen DeLoach is certainly a point of emphasis to watch, just considering how thin they are at linebacker and how much they need to develop there. Like Servassier Dennis is injured again. It's becoming a theme with him. He was injured a lot last year. He's already not practicing again this year. That's a problem. Like, I'm just red flag. That is a red flag for me. You're only as good as your availability in this league. He even said it himself before he got injured. So I am very curious, as this undrafted free agent who was highly touted, entering the team from day one, like rookie minicamp type of stuff, and certainly had a good career at Florida State. What is his impact going to be? And it's just, that is such a position of need. Like entering the draft next year, they got Levante, so they were able to push it down another year. But like, we know this team needs another linebacker, right? Just like we know Evan's going to complain about the outside linebackers. There's the inside linebackers, and he's also going to complain about the outside linebackers, right? We know where their weaknesses are. Those two positions, one of the guard spots. So I'm curious if maybe they caught gold here. So typically 1 to 2 undrafted free agents make the Buccaneers under Todd Bowles. It seems like Kalen DeLoach is going to be in that running to be the guy this year.
All right. Well, lots to keep an eye on. Of course, I'm going to be watching, one of the big players I'll be keeping an eye on is Jalen McMillan. I think we already kind of have an idea as to what he could be. It'll be nice to, he got a lot of hype when they were in shells and shorts. Then he continued to produce when they put on pads. Now let's see if he continues to take that next step and do it in real live snaps when he's going up against guys that are literally, scratching, fighting, clawing for a job and do not have his health or best interest in mind and are literally trying to take his head off. I think I should force you to, do your bold prediction, your player prediction, your score prediction, because it's the preseason game. But I'll save that for the dress rehearsal preseason game. We can get your dress rehearsal crystal ball.
Yeah, let's do that. And with these teams now that they have the inter-squad scrimmages, with the hope of them not like beating themselves up like the Giants and the Lions are doing currently. But a lot of teams get work in in those situations as well. So this actually leading up into this game, they're not getting that. But versus Jacksonville versus they have the Dolphins, and Miami, they both will have joint practices. So typically when you have that, the ones get a lot of work that on game day you don't really need it. Maybe operationally you want to see it that final game, but considering I think last year they only had the trip to New York as their joint practice situation.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't remember another time that the Buccaneers have had 2 joint practices.
I don't remember one either. I know, of course, when the Dolphins did the joint practices in Tampa was when Brady disappeared for 10 days.
Yeah.
And then I think it was back-to-back years before that they did joint practices with the Titans.
They definitely did the Titans. Zion McCollum's rookie year, so it was 2 years ago, because that's where he hurt his hamstring. Was in Nashville, so that definitely happened. That must have been 21, right?
Yeah, so maybe it was twice in 3 years. I know they had a couple,
and then no pandemic season. So but we're in agreement. You can't think of the last time they had 2.
No.
Yeah, so that's why I'm kind of wondering if we'll see less of the if there's any time to actually do it, it's week 1. But because you're so far out from the regular season, it makes no point.
Right.
So just given how the schedule laid out, not there's the logistics of when the regular season starts, and then there's the logistics of how the week is with them going up against each other again. So I certainly suspect, especially with the amount of veterans they bought back and invested in, I don't know how many starters we're going to see. And typically, I'm a man that likes to see their starters play in the preseason games, at least a series. And even I'm a little bit wary of that. By game 3, I'm in, at least for a little bit. But because of those joint practices, I'm actually this season going to soften on that stance.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, even if you do kind of that dress rehearsal that teams typically did where they were playing into the second half, that was usually the third preseason game. There was still another preseason game after that. Now there's essentially a bye week, or might be 2. I can't remember exactly, but it's still a long time from game 3 to kickoff weekend. So teams have it's been weird to see how different teams have adjusted to the 3 preseason game schedule and kind of the layout of everything. But I'm with you 100%.
Do we need to see Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Tristan Wirfs,
Vita?
Baker, who else? Levante David, Jamel Dean, Antoine Winfield Jr., Jordan Whitehead. We don't need to see these guys. They've they've had 1 million reps. They're good.
Yep. Yeah, I'm trusting each and every one of those guys to show up against the Commanders in week 1 ready to go. So, all right, that is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Please check out everything going on over at bucsnation.com. Evan, let everybody know what you have going on over on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com.
And we're going to be out at Bucs practice today for Military Day. It's the final practice that is open to the public. There are general public practices, there are season ticket holders, Military Day, last one where anybody on the outside can come watch them. So we're going to be there, and we will continue to get you prepared for the season opener come September 8th, right? September 8th, yep. September 7th, 8th. I was right first time. So 10 Tampa Bay plus, 10tampabay.com. And then at eCloskey, WTSP, you can always hit me up with your questions, thoughts, concerns. 99% of the time I will respond as long as you're not a jerk.
That's right. He does respond to me, even though I'm a little bit of a jerk because he was
grandfathered in.
I was grandfathered in. My jerkiness is strictly based on collegiate sports. So outside of that, We're good. Yeah, check out everything going on over on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, at eCloskey WTSP. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. And make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.